If you're enjoying this tale from the Old West, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories from the frontier. Your support helps us bring these classic Western adventures to life. The sun was setting behind the rolling hills of Montana Territory when Samuel McKenna heard the gunshots echoing across his ranch. He dropped the hammer he'd been using to repair his fence and reached for the Winchester rifle leaning against the barn wall. 3 quick shots, then silence. Samuel had lived alone on his spread for nearly a decade, ever since his wife Martha passed from the fever. He'd grown accustomed to the sounds of his land, the way the wind moved through the cottonwoods, the distant howl of coyotes, the occasional rumble of cattle. But gunfire, that was different. He saddled his horse quickly, checking his ammunition as twilight painted the sky purple and orange. The shots had come from the direction of Devil's Canyon, a treacherous stretch of rocky terrain that marked the eastern boundary of his property. Few travelers ventured through that area after dark. As Samuel rode toward the canyon, his horse's hooves drumming against the hard-packed earth, he caught sight of smoke rising from beyond a cluster of boulders. Not the thin wisp of a campfire, but the thick black smoke of something burning fierce and fast. When he crested the ridge overlooking the canyon floor, Samuel saw the overturned stagecoach. The horses were gone, probably spooked and running wild across the plains. Scattered around the wreckage were trunks and suitcases, their contents spilled across the rocky ground like the remnants of shattered dreams. Samuel dismounted and approached cautiously, his rifle ready. The coach was still burning, flames licking at the wooden frame and leather seats. He could see 2 bodies near the front of the wreck, both men wearing the dust-covered clothes of frontier travelers. Then he heard it, a soft moan coming from behind a large boulder 20 yards from the burning coach. Samuel moved toward the sound, his boots crunching on broken glass and scattered belongings. What he found there would change the course of his solitary life forever. She was lying on her side, partially hidden by the shadow of the rock. Her dress, once fine and proper, was torn and stained with blood. Long red hair spilled across her shoulders like liquid fire in the flickering light from the burning stagecoach. Her face was pale, but even in her weakened state, Samuel could see she was beautiful. Blood seeped from a wound in her shoulder, and her breathing was shallow and labored. She was unconscious, but alive. Samuel knelt beside her, checking for other injuries, while keeping his rifle within easy reach. The attack on the stagecoach was recent, and whoever had done this might still be nearby. He gently turned her onto her back, and her eyes fluttered open. They were green as spring grass, filled with pain and confusion. When she saw Samuel kneeling over her, she tried to pull away, fear replacing the confusion in her gaze. Samuel held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. He spoke in the gentle tone he'd once used with frightened horses and wounded animals. She relaxed slightly, though her eyes never left his face as he examined her wounds. The bullet had passed through her shoulder, missing any vital organs, but leaving her weak from blood loss. Samuel knew he had to get her medical attention quickly, but the nearest doctor was in Silver Creek, more than 20 miles away. She wouldn't survive the journey in her current condition. Using his knife, Samuel cut strips from her petticoat to fashion makeshift bandages. She winced as he cleaned and dressed the wound, but she didn't cry out. There was strength in her. He could see it in the set of her jaw and the determined look in her eyes. As Samuel worked, she managed to whisper her name, Catherine. Catherine O'Malley. She'd been traveling from Boston to San Francisco when the bandits attacked their coach just as the sun was setting. There had been 4 men, their faces covered with bandanas, riding hard and shooting wild. The driver and guard had tried to fight them off, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Catherine had hidden behind the seats as bullets flew, praying the nightmare would end. When the shooting stopped, she'd crawled from the wreckage and managed to stumble behind the boulder before collapsing. Samuel helped Catherine to her feet, supporting her weight as they walked slowly toward his horse. The burning stagecoach cast dancing shadows across the canyon walls, creating an eerie backdrop for their escape. He knew they needed to leave quickly before the bandits returned or other predators arrived. The ride back to Samuel's ranch house was slow and careful. Catherine rode in front of him, leaning back against his chest for support. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her red hair flowing in the night breeze. Samuel found himself protective of this wounded stranger in a way that surprised him. His ranch house was modest but well built, constructed of logs and stone, with a wide porch facing west toward the mountains. Samuel had built it with his own hands during his first years in Montana, back when he dreamed of filling it with children and laughter. Now it stood quiet and lonely under the star-filled sky. Samuel carried Catherine inside and laid her gently on the bed in what had once been the guest room. He lit several oil lamps, filling the room with warm, golden light. The wound needed proper cleaning and fresh bandages, and he suspected she had other injuries that weren't immediately visible. As he tended to her wounds, Catherine told him more about the attack. The bandits had been looking for something specific, not just money or valuables. They'd torn through the passengers' belongings with particular intensity, as if searching for a particular item or document. Catherine revealed that she'd been carrying important papers for her father's business dealings in California. Legal documents related to mining claims and water rights that were worth a considerable fortune. She suspected the attack hadn't been random, but carefully planned by someone who knew about the documents. Samuel listened as he worked, occasionally asking questions about the men who'd attacked the coach. Their methods sounded familiar, matching the description of a gang that had been terrorizing travelers throughout the territory for the past several months. Led by a man called Blackjack Morrison, they were known for their brutality and careful planning. As dawn approached, Catherine's condition stabilized. The bleeding had stopped, and her color was returning. Samuel made coffee and prepared a simple breakfast, the first meal he'd shared with another person in his house for many years. They ate in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Catherine was grateful for Samuel's kindness, but she was also troubled by the implications of the attack. If the bandits had been after her father's documents, they would certainly come looking for her. She couldn't stay at the ranch without putting Samuel in danger, but she was too weak to travel and had nowhere else to go. Samuel, meanwhile, found himself reluctant to see Catherine leave. Her presence had brought life back to his lonely house, reminding him of what he'd lost when Martha died. But he also understood the danger she represented. Blackjack Morrison's gang wasn't known for leaving witnesses alive. Over the next few days, as Catherine recovered her strength, Samuel prepared for the trouble he knew was coming. He cleaned and loaded every weapon he owned, checked his ammunition supplies, and made plans for defending the ranch. He also sent word to the sheriff in Silver Creek, though he doubted help would arrive in time. Catherine proved to be more than just a helpless victim. As her shoulder healed, she revealed skills that surprised Samuel. She could shoot with remarkable accuracy, handle horses with confidence, and had a sharp mind for strategy. Her father, she explained, had raised her more like a son than a daughter, teaching her to be self-reliant and strong. Together, they fortified the ranch house, boarding up windows and creating defensive positions. Catherine suggested they move the cattle closer to the house, both to protect the herd and to create obstacles for anyone approaching on horseback. Samuel was impressed by her tactical thinking and her willingness to fight. The attack came on the fourth night after Catherine's rescue. Samuel was awakened by the sound of his horses nickering nervously in the corral. He crept to the window and saw shadows moving among the trees at the edge of his property. Blackjack Morrison's gang had found them. Samuel woke Catherine quietly, and they took their positions at opposite ends of the house. The bandits approached cautiously, clearly expecting resistance. Samuel counted at least 6 men, all heavily armed and moving with the practiced coordination of experienced fighters. The first shots came just before midnight, bullets splintering the wooden shutters Samuel had installed over the windows. He returned fire, his Winchester barking in the darkness. Catherine's pistol joined the fight from her position near the back door, her shots precise and deadly. The battle raged for hours, with the bandits trying different approaches to breach the house's defenses. They set fire to the barn, hoping to flush Samuel and Catherine out, but the two defenders held their ground. Samuel's careful preparations and Catherine's unexpected skills proved to be a formidable combination. As dawn broke, the sound of approaching horses announced the arrival of Sheriff Thompson and his deputies from Silver Creek. Samuel's message had reached them, and they'd ridden through the night to provide assistance. The remaining bandits, outnumbered and facing fresh opponents, retreated into the hills. Black Jack Morrison himself lay dead in Samuel's yard, brought down by Catherine's accurate shooting during the height of the battle. The gang's reign of terror in the territory was finally over, and the survivors would face justice for their crimes. In the aftermath of the fight, Catherine faced a choice. Her father's business in California was waiting, and the documents she'd protected were still needed there. But Montana had become more than just a stopping point on her journey. It had become a place where she'd found not just refuge, but something she hadn't expected to find: love. Samuel, too, was facing a decision that would shape the rest of his life. His solitary existence on the ranch had been shattered by Catherine's arrival, and he'd discovered that loneliness wasn't the natural state he'd thought it was. The house felt empty whenever she wasn't in it, and he couldn't imagine returning to his previous isolation. Catherine chose to stay, sending word to her father in Boston that she'd found something in Montana worth more than any business opportunity in California. Samuel's ranch became their ranch, and the house that had once echoed with emptiness filled with laughter and conversation once again. They married that autumn, with half the territory in attendance. The story of the red-haired woman who'd helped defend a ranch against Black Jack Morrison's gang had spread throughout the region, making Catherine something of a legend, but she preferred the quiet life of a rancher's wife to any notoriety her adventures might have brought. Years later, as Samuel and Catherine watched their children play in the yard where the great battle had taken place, they often talked about that night when gunshots had changed both their lives forever. The frontier was changing too, becoming more civilized with each passing year, but they had found their place in it together. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from Samuel's modest spread into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Catherine's business knowledge, combined with Samuel's practical experience, proved to be an unbeatable combination in the challenging world of frontier ranching. Their love story became the stuff of local legend, told and retold in saloons and around campfires throughout Montana territory. The tale of the solitary rancher and the beautiful red-haired woman who'd found each other in the midst of violence and danger captured the imagination of everyone who heard it. The first winter they spent together tested their newfound love in ways neither had anticipated. Snow fell early and heavy that year, isolating the ranch for weeks at a time. Catherine, accustomed to the social life of Boston, sometimes felt the crushing weight of the frontier's loneliness during those long, dark months. Samuel worried that she might regret her decision to stay, especially when letters arrived from her father begging her to reconsider and return east. But Catherine proved as resilient in facing the challenges of ranch life as she had been in facing Black Jack Morrison's bullets. She learned to cook over a wood stove, to preserve meat and vegetables, and to tend sick cattle in freezing temperatures. During those quiet winter evenings, Catherine would read aloud from the books she'd brought from Boston while Samuel worked on repairing tack and tools. Her voice filled the house with stories of distant places and different times, creating a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the hearth. Spring brought new challenges and opportunities. Word had spread about the rich grazing land in their area, and other settlers began arriving to claim homesteads nearby. Some were honest families looking for a fresh start, but others were speculators and opportunists hoping to profit from the region's growing reputation. One such man was Marcus Thornfield, a wealthy cattle baron from Texas, who arrived with plans to buy up as much land as possible. He made Samuel an offer for the ranch that would have made them wealthy beyond their dreams, but Samuel refused without hesitation. The land wasn't just property to him, it was home. Thornfield wasn't accustomed to being refused, and he began pressuring other landowners in the area to sell. Those who resisted found their cattle mysteriously disappearing, their fences cut, and their water sources contaminated. It became clear that Thornfield was using the same tactics that had once made Blackjack Morrison so feared. Catherine suggested they organize the local ranchers into a mutual protection association. Her experience with her father's business dealings had taught her the power of collective action. Samuel was initially skeptical, preferring to handle his own problems, but Catherine's persuasive arguments eventually won him over. The association proved effective in protecting the smaller ranchers from Thornfield's intimidation tactics. When his hired men tried to rustle cattle from the Morrison place, they found themselves facing not just one angry rancher, but a coordinated group of armed neighbors. Thornfield's reign of terror was short-lived. As summer arrived, Catherine discovered she was expecting their first child. The news filled Samuel with a joy he hadn't felt since his days with Martha, but it also brought new fears. The frontier was no place for a pregnant woman, and the nearest doctor was still 20 miles away in Silver Creek. Catherine, however, refused to be treated like an invalid. She continued her ranch duties well into her pregnancy, only gradually reducing her more strenuous activities as the months passed. The neighboring ranch wives, grateful for her help in organizing against Thornfield, rallied around her with advice and support. Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered half the babies in the territory, moved into the ranch house during Catherine's final month. Samuel had never been more nervous in his life, not even during the gunfight with Blackjack Morrison's gang. But when their son was born on a crisp October morning, his fears melted away at the sound of the baby's first cry. They named him Thomas, after Samuel's father, and he proved to be as strong-willed as both his parents. Catherine recovered quickly from the birth, aided by her natural resilience and the clean mountain air. Watching her with their son, Samuel marveled at how completely she had adapted to frontier life. The second year brought a devastating drought that tested every rancher in the territory. Wells ran dry, grass withered, and cattle died by the hundreds. Many families packed up and returned east, defeated by the harsh realities of frontier life. But Samuel and Catherine endured, using every trick Samuel had learned during his years alone on the ranch. Catherine proved instrumental in organizing relief efforts for the struggling families. She coordinated food distributions, arranged for medical care for the sick, and helped find temporary homes for orphaned children. Her leadership during the crisis earned her the respect and admiration of everyone in the territory. When the rains finally came, bringing relief to the parched land, the community that emerged was stronger and more unified than before. The shared hardship had forged bonds that would last for generations. Samuel and Catherine's ranch became an unofficial community center, hosting barn dances, church services, and town meetings. Their second child, a daughter they named Martha after Samuel's first wife, was born during the spring roundup. Unlike her brother's dramatic entrance into the world, Martha arrived quietly and peacefully, as if she already understood the rhythm of ranch life. Catherine was back on her feet within days, much to Samuel's amazement and concern. As the years passed, the ranch grew and prospered. Samuel's careful breeding program produced some of the finest cattle in the territory, while Catherine's business acumen helped them secure the best prices at market. They built a new barn, expanded the house, and hired additional hands to help with the growing operation. But success brought new challenges. Cattle rustlers, displaced by the law's growing presence in other areas, began targeting the more prosperous ranches. Samuel found himself once again preparing for armed conflict, this time not just to protect his family, but to defend the entire community they had helped build. The rustlers made their move during the autumn roundup, when most of the men were away from the ranch working the herds. They hadn't counted on Catherine's vigilance or her skill with a rifle. When Samuel returned from the range, he found 3 rustlers tied up in his barn, and Catherine calmly feeding their children as if nothing had happened. The incident reinforced Catherine's reputation as a woman not to be underestimated. Stories of the red-haired rancher's wife who could outshoot most men and outthink the rest spread throughout the territory. Potential troublemakers learned to give the McKenna Ranch a wide berth. As Montana Territory moved toward statehood, Samuel and Catherine found themselves increasingly involved in political activities. Catherine's education and Samuel's practical experience made them valuable voices in discussions about the territory's future. They hosted meetings with territorial officials and helped draft proposals for the new state's constitution. Their influence extended beyond politics into education and social development. Catherine established the territory's first lending library using books donated by families throughout the region. She also organized the construction of a schoolhouse, ensuring that the next generation would have opportunities their parents had never known. Samuel served as the first elected sheriff of their newly formed county, a position he accepted reluctantly but filled with distinction. His reputation for fairness and his reluctance to use violence except when absolutely necessary made him respected by both law-abiding citizens and reformed outlaws seeking a second chance. The ranch continued to thrive under their joint management, becoming one of the largest and most successful operations in the new state. But Samuel and Catherine never forgot their humble beginnings or the community that had supported them through difficult times. They used their success to help others achieve their own dreams. Their children grew up as true children of the frontier, equally comfortable in the saddle or the schoolroom. Thomas inherited his father's practical skills and his mother's sharp mind, while Martha combined her mother's beauty with her father's quiet strength. Both were destined to play important roles in the state's continued development. But for Samuel and Catherine, the real story wasn't about gunfights or dramatic rescues. It was about 2 people who'd found in each other what they hadn't even known they were looking for. A partnership that could weather any storm the frontier might bring their way. Their love had not only survived the harsh realities of frontier life, but had flourished, creating a legacy that would endure for generations. What do you think happened to the rest of Blackjack Morrison's gang after they fled into the hills? Share your thoughts in the comments below about whether justice eventually caught up with them, or if they continued their outlaw ways in other territories.